Welcome to the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, where being a badass has less to do with what you wear and what music you listen to, and everything to do with whether you've got the thriving online business of your dreams. I'm your renegade thinking Harvard Law grad turned online entrepreneur host, Bobby Klink. In my years building my thriving business, the most important lesson I've learned is that being a badass online marketer isn't about secret strategies or ninja tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff right and showing the F up. So each week here on the show, you'll get clear, easy to execute guidance on how to build your online business and a swift kick in the ass or two to make sure you're getting it done. Hey there, welcome to this Friday live edition of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I am your host, Bobby Klink, and I'm excited for today's show because on today's show, we're going to be talking about a really important rule, and it's a rule that we just don't live by. And I shouldn't call it a rule since last week I was talking about how there aren't a lot of rules we have to follow. Let's call it a principle, and it's a principle for business, but it's also a principle for life. It's something that we need to adopt. And the concept I want to talk about is the very simple concept that we all need to begin with the end in mind. That's something that we've all heard. It's one of those classic, rules from what is it? The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But the reality is, as much as we hear that rule, we're not living by it. Seriously, so few of us are actually doing that in our business on a day in and day out basis, and that's hurting us. And that's something that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to, come and explain what it means and give some thoughts. And it was inspired by a kind of a breakthrough moment that someone had inside my Massive Action May program that I'm running right now. Now, if you haven't joined me yet for Massive Action May, I don't understand why you haven't. It is an amazing, free, no pitch, high value kind of coaching program that I'm doing inside my Fans First Society membership site. What I'm doing is, as a celebration of May being my breakthrough month in business, but also my birthday month, I decided to do kind of a pay it forward, give back to my community program. And that's where Massive Action May came from. We're going through a free program that was put out by my coach, James Wedmore, and we're going through it step by step. That's what we're doing. There's 2 coaching things a week, a deep dive, and then a question and answer session, some special guests, some special trainings, all this good stuff. Plus you get access to my membership site, which you normally have to pay for, absolutely free. So again, if you haven't joined me yet, you really should. You can get all the details and join me by heading over to bobbyklink.com/take action. Again, bobbyklink.com/take action. And you can get access to my paid membership, all this coaching, all this amazingness for all of May, absolutely free. Don't have to enter a credit card, no renewals, nothing like that. I just want to help my audience. And so that's what we're doing. So what I wanted to talk about and how this concept of today's episode of begin with the end in mind came up was an insight that someone had inside of Massive Action May. And it started because James Wedmore, my coach, in the program we're going through, they talk about, he kind of talks about approaching things differently. And what I mean is his training that he's doing is called, your first 100 leads. But I always like to tell people it's a lot more than 100 leads. It's not about getting your first 100 leads, although it will help you with that. It's really about aligning everything in your business. And one of the things that he talks about, one of the mistakes that so many people make is that when they're trying to build an audience and build a list, they don't begin with the end in mind. Now, I don't know if he even uses that phrase or that language, but what he says is that people go off and just start creating freebies, and they put a ton of time and effort and all this stuff into freebies without even thinking about what are they going to offer at the end. And this was the breakthrough moment that this person, Meg, who's in my community, had. She said it was kind of this duh moment. And we all have it. Because I want to be honest with you, when I first started doing this stuff, I did the exact same thing that James said is the mistake. I was just creating freebies. And I wasn't necessarily thinking about, okay, how is this freebie going to relate to what I'm going to offer and have to sell down the line? Because the reality is that if my freebie is not aligned with what I have to sell, if it's not something that will actually move a potential buyer forward in their journey, then it's not helping my business. It might mean that I'm bringing in the wrong kind of lead, a lead that's not going to help me at all. Or it might just mean that I'm bringing someone in, but I'm not actually moving them forward on the journey that they need to take to actually go from lead to buyer. And so that's one example of how so many of us aren't actually beginning with the end in mind. And like I said, if you fall into that camp and if this resonates with you, don't feel bad, because I think just about every entrepreneur that I've heard of, that I talk about, that I talk to, this is how they start. And there's actually this, I don't know if it's irony is the right word, but some of the folks out there who are teaching like how to create a product and launch it will talk about during the runway, kind of right before you're going to launch, that you'll come out with a freebie that's really laser focused to your offer. Now, I'm not saying that's horrible advice, but what we should be doing is that we should be introducing those laser focused freebies way before we're going to sell. Every freebie that we offer should be laser focused and aligned with the product we are going to sell. And if you don't know exactly what your product is, you at least know kind of what you plan to do. How do you plan to help? And your freebies, everything you do, but needs to be aligned with that. And so that's kind of the first way that I see a lot of people doing this, making this mistake. Now, for example, I kind of made this mistake early on. One of my freebies was about like how to get stock images that you can actually use that have the right kind of license. It's a great freebie. It provides a ton of value. But is that a freebie that's going to lead people to buy a legal template from me? Probably not. Now, it's a service that I'm happy to provide. I'm happy to do that. But spending money, for example, on Facebook ads to that lead magnet is just kind of crazy, because I'm going to be attracting the wrong kind of people. Or even if I'm attracting the right kind of people, I'm not moving them on the journey. So again, when it comes to creating freebies, begin with the end in mind. And that means think about what you have to offer at the end of it and make sure it's aligned. But another way that I think a lot of us aren't always in alignment and aren't beginning with the end in mind is with our content. Now, in creating our content, first of all, we should think about what our offer is, just like our freebie should. But more importantly, or just as importantly, I should say, we need to think about our positioning. How do we want to position ourselves in the market? And we need to be creating content that will position us the right way. And again, this is something where oftentimes we get sucked into creating content without truly thinking about that question. What is the purpose of our content? What do we want our content to do? How do we want our content to make people feel, think, and what do they think about us? And what do we want our content to have people associate us with? And I'll be honest with you, this is something that I have to deal with still. Candidly, I was having a discussion, very recently with Katie, my integrator, about this, that we're not doing enough content, and it's not her fault, it's mine. I want to be clear on that. but we're not doing enough content that is laser focused on positioning me as the email guy. Now, people know me as the email guy once they're in my world, but there's not a lot of content out there that's positioning me that way on a regular basis. And that is a shortcoming because I want to be positioned as the legal guy, as the email guy and the legal guy. And if I want to be positioned as the email guy, I have to put content out that does that positioning. So again, think about how you want to position yourself in the market, and the content you're putting out there needs to be aligned and needs to do that for you. Now, the next thing, those are kind of a couple of concrete examples, but now I want to give you an example that's kind of at a higher level. And it has to do with this. Oftentimes, we miss the forest for the trees. And we do this because we're not asking the right question. And what I mean is that in asking just about any question, what we need to do is we need to think through what is the ultimate goal here and make sure that that question is aligned with that. And I'm going to give you an example that hopefully will help you understand what I'm getting at here. And this is an example from, 15 months ago, 16 months ago. It would have been February-ish, I guess, of 2019. In January of 2019, I did a webinar launch of my Online Genius template library, my all-access pass to my legal templates. And in February, we had our first mastermind retreat of the year for James Wedmore's mastermind. It was my first year in, and I came in to do this webinar or to do this kind of hot seat to present a debrief of my webinar of what had happened and to ask the question, how should I improve my webinar funnel the next time? Because I plan to do this launch quarterly. That was the wrong question. The right question wouldn't have been, how do I do the webinar better? The right question would have been, how do I improve my launch and make more money the next time I launch the template library? And let me explain why that was the right question. Because I was so focused and fixated on this particular way of launching that I was missing the fact, and I was missing the details, that maybe a webinar wasn't the right way to launch that product. And that was the insight that James and the other members of that mastermind helped to give me at that point. That question, asking that better question, is what actually led to what became kind of my signature thing last year, which was the non-launch launch, where I simply sent emails, made just as much money as with a webinar, and spent $0 on ads. And it was an insight I could only have when I backed away and stopped saying, how do I have a more successful webinar? And said instead, how do I actually make more money with less effort? So that's an example of something that, and I'll just tell you, in our mastermind, with James, this type of reframing happens all the time, because oftentimes everybody does this. Just so you know, and as advanced as you are, you will probably have this happen to you. You will be fixated on where you are. You'll be, worried about what you're doing. And oftentimes what we need to do is step back, go to a higher level of abstraction, but more importantly, ask the question, what is my ultimate goal here? So for example, if you're running like some people, and my audience doesn't do a ton of this, but if you're running an evergreen webinar and people get on your list for that evergreen webinar and then nothing happens after if they don't buy, there's no, no relaunch, there's no nurture, there's nothing to recapture those people later. And I've heard people ask this question. People said, okay, well, so what should I do on segmenting my list after that? That's the wrong question. The right question is, how do I make more money from the leads who are already in my funnel. And it might be about segmenting, or it might simply be about putting in a nurture sequence over time that has flash sales later. But you've got to be asking the right question. And oftentimes the question is going to be, how do I sell more with less effort or with less stress or whatever it is? But you get the point. We need to get to that level of abstraction. Figure out what is your goal and ask that. So that's a reframe I want you to make. But another thing, and this is kind of the last thing I want to talk about where we don't do this very often, is we're not asking this one question often enough. Where do I want to be in a year? Or if we do ask that question, we ask that question, but then we don't align what we're doing today with the answer. And again, I'm guilty of this as much as anybody else. And I want to be very clear. I've never had a 1-year plan where a year later I'm actually there. It's a running joke that in my world, you know, a plan is only about as good as the first week that we have it. But I have a vision for where I want to be in a year, but oftentimes I'm not even living up to that because I'm continuing to do things now based upon where I am right now. And there's a couple of ways that this comes in. First of all, if you expect to potentially pivot or add a business line or do something like that in your business down the line, we have to be thinking today about how do I get there? What do I need to be doing today to position myself for that in 6 months, in a year? Again, kind of like I said earlier, I need to be positioning myself as the email guy so that people more broadly outside of the people who already know me will come to know me for email. Because that's part of my vision, right? Is that in a year from now, I'll be the legal guy, but I'll also be the email guy, right? So if I want that, I have to take actions today to get there. And that means sometimes the problem is we're in the status quo, right? We're already doing things, and stopping doing what we're doing to actually say, let me step back, and does this actually serve where I want to be in a year is a hard thing to do. But we need to do that. And then another place that I want to give you an example of this is it's this concept, and I will misquote it, and I will say it completely wrong. But James says it in a great way. And I love the way he describes it, is that you can't solve your current problems from your current state of existence, I guess is what you would say. In other words, and I'll use this by an example. If you ask the question, well, how does a 6-figure entrepreneur operate? If you're not yet to 6 figures and you want to be a 6-figure entrepreneur, you need to start operating like that today. You need to start thinking like and operating like what you want to be in the present. Because you'll never become a 6-figure entrepreneur until you start operating like a 6-figure entrepreneur. But here's the different part of that. I'm a multi-6-figure entrepreneur. I want to become a 7-figure entrepreneur. So if I'm acting how a 6-figure entrepreneur acts, I'm holding myself back. So I have to be thinking in decisions I make in my business, in how I set things up, how would a 7-figure entrepreneur run their business? Would they spend their time editing videos? Would they spend their time in the minutia, in the details of little tiny decisions about social media? No. That's not how 7-figure entrepreneurs act. And so I have to, and this is something I'm perpetually doing now, thinking to myself, if I want to be a 7-figure entrepreneur, I need to act like a 7-figure entrepreneur right now. And what does that mean? What decisions do I have to make? How do I have to act? How do I have to organize my business? How do I have to organize my time? What do I need to be focusing on? What do I need to be comfortable letting go of? And so this is an important lesson that all of us need to grasp. And it's kind of this funny thing. It took me a long time to get this, but outsourcing and hiring is the example of this. And it was my biggest roadblock. I had this block about it. And most people who know me know that I get an idea and boom, I'm in action. I mean, I'm going. But hiring was this thing that I couldn't do. And it took this reframe for me to get comfortable doing that. And it took a reframe of me saying, I can't have the business I want if I continue to operate the way I've been operating. And so I had to take a leap of faith, and I had to make the decision to hire. And now I have a team, and now I'm able to spend my time creating content, creating offers, casting the vision for the business, doing the stuff that's actually going to make money instead of creating social media graphics, doing little things that just don't matter or need to get done, but that I'm basically paying myself $3 to $5 an hour to do. And as an example of this, literally right before I got on this call, or right before on this podcast recording, I should say, I was having 3 different Skype conversations with some potential offshore folks to do work for us. I'm in conversations with someone who was my VA a long time ago in my law firm business about potentially coming in and being an admin VA with us. I'm in conversations with video editors to edit some videos, to do some things so that we can just get it done. And here on Team Clink, we're also going to bring on a design VA of some sort to be able to do this stuff so that I don't have to, but Katie doesn't have to, and neither does Bobby Joe on my team. We don't have to spend our time creating graphics. And again, I'm just saying, the basic graphics. You think about all the things that we have to create as online entrepreneurs for our businesses, and especially me, since I've got about 857 Facebook groups and all these other things. We shouldn't be doing that. We can find someone else who's better at it and who can do it at a lower rate to free up me and Katie and Bobby Joe to spend our time on the high leverage work. So my encouragement to you today, my call to action to you today is simple. Begin with the end in mind. Have that as your North Star. Constantly be asking yourself, where do you want to be? What is your goal? What do you want to achieve? And have that be what decides what you do in the moment. That is the key to ultimately becoming successful. And it's something that you will always have to kind of come back to and rethink and think about. I know I do. So I encourage you to do that. Now, I'm going to come back to promoting that Massive Action May quickly. I would love to help you during May make massive progress in your business. If you have not yet joined my Massive Action May program, I encourage you to do it. It is a chance for you to get this kind of alignment, in your offer, your freebie, your messaging, your positioning, how you do social media content. And we're even going to have a Facebook ads manager, my Facebook ads manager, come in and teach about Facebook ads. So we've got all of that. You got question and answer sessions with me. You get all of these lessons. Plus, you're also getting access to my content, including all of my prior workshops about creating content, about finding your fans, about email, about messaging and positioning. You can get in and you can get all of that. So I encourage you to go and do that now. That's my call to action to you. You can find that at bobbyclink.com/take action. Again, it's absolutely free. Join me for Massive Action May, and I'll talk to you next week. That's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. And in the meantime, go out and build the badass business of your dreams.